Do you consider yourself a detail-oriented person or a leader? Well, you might be neither, but just a control freak. If that hits a nerve, it could be because you exhibit some specific signs. A control freak is someone who wants to control everything, and that means absolutely everything, no exceptions. And if they lose control, they get anxious and fearful. So what are the signs that might indicate you're a control freak? Well, there are many signs, but in this video, we'll discuss the 5 most prominent ones. If you identify with at least 3 of them, there's a strong chance you're a control freak. So, without further ado, let's start with number 5. Do you struggle with trust issues when delegating tasks to others? Do you often take on the entire responsibility of a task, no matter how big or small, because you believe others won't do it correctly? And do you fear that if you delegate, you'll ultimately have to correct and redo the task anyway? If this sounds like you, it's a classic control freak behavior. But why do control freaks struggle to delegate tasks? Well, it's because they are perfectionists who set extremely high standards for themselves and others. They think that others won't be able to meet these standards. And to be honest, most people usually can't. To maintain control and avoid failure, they take on every task, exhausting themselves physically and mentally. This habit also makes them poor team players, and a poor team player can never be a good leader. But what if a control freak is forced to delegate tasks? Well, that's another sign of control freak behavior. Number 4. Imagine if you had to delegate tasks to someone as a team, despite your trust issues. What would you do? Well, control freaks usually start micromanaging in such situations. They give instructions for even the smallest tasks, monitor every action, and make corrections repeatedly after the task is completed. But why? When you assign a responsibility to someone, why do you need to micromanage so much? Remember, we discussed earlier that control freaks fear losing control, and when they're forced to delegate tasks, they feel like they're losing control and start to fear that things will go wrong. So, to maintain their sense of control, they start micromanaging, thinking, if I don't keep a close eye on them, they'll mess it up. Micromanaging makes them feel like they're in control of the situation and maintains their dominance. You might be thinking that this behavior is so toxic, but the next sign of control freak behavior is even more damaging to those around them. Number 3. Do you often criticize and correct others for minor issues that have no impact on your life, like someone's incorrect grammar or pronunciation, or dictating what they should do in their life? Control freaks habitually criticize and correct others for small, irrelevant things. But why do they do this? It's an automatic response, driven by their self-image as a superior being who must improve others. They believe they're helping others by criticizing and correcting them. But in reality, they're subconsciously asserting their authority and dominance. If we had to define this trait in one line, it would be fair to say that they act like a self-appointed messiah in every situation, trying to control others' actions according to their own standards. But what's the harm in this behavior? It's clear that this toxic behavior causes people to gradually distance themselves from you, and by the time you realize what's happening, you're left alone. Number 2. Do you always try to have the final word in an argument just to win? Control freaks have a single goal in any argument or debate, and that's to win. And if they can't conclude the argument with their final statement, they feel a sense of mental anguish, thinking that the discussion has ended without a resolution. This is actually a sign of a deeper need to dominate and control conversations. But how does winning an argument give them control? Well, when they're unable to finish the argument on their own terms, they feel like the conversation has slipped out of their grasp, triggering their fear of losing control. This fear drives them to try to have the last word in every argument, even if it means abruptly ending the conversation themselves. Number 1. People who are called control freaks aren't called that for no reason. In reality, they're obsessed with gaining control and are willing to do anything to achieve it. Do you often manipulate people to get them to do what you want? Control freaks frequently use tactics like guilt, anger, or self-pity to manipulate others. And they're so skilled at manipulation that the person being manipulated doesn't even realize it's happening. But what's even more dangerous is that control freaks often use dark psychology tricks to manipulate others. And we've already revealed those dark tricks in one of our previous videos.